How long will you depend on your husband's income? If you have something to say to us, become independent without relying on Daniel first, and then we'll talk. It's unbelievable that you live without paying rent. You're such a waste. They began to shout and rant. I could no longer bear it. I would rather live a lonely life than stay in that house. I would never try to make those uncomprehending people understand me. I stood up quietly and then I said to them, I'm leaving. Where do you think you're going? Without a guarantor, you won't be able to find a place to live, won't you? My father-in-law spoke with a tone of concern, but I could feel the unpleasant disdain in his words. Regardless, I had no intention of asking for help from my in-laws. Don't worry. I'll manage somehow. With those words, I left the house. My name is Stacy Manning. I am 30 years old. I was blessed with warm parents and led a happy life. Being an only child, the way my mother doted on me seemed laughable in retrospect. But 10 years ago, my parents passed away in an unexpected accident. At that time, as a university student, I fell into a deep depression as if I had lost my will to live. My savior at that time was my current husband, Daniel. I met Daniel, who's 10 years older than me, at the company I worked for after graduating from university. Touched by his warmth, I gradually began to regain my smile. Eventually, I developed a fondness for Daniel and we began dating. Since starting my relationship with Daniel, both my work and personal life became fulfilling, and I began to feel happiness. After 3 years of dating, he proposed to me. I had visited Daniel's parents' home many times during our relationship and had built a good relationship with them. His mother was always warm and would say, Daniel has chosen you and we're happy to have you. Believing her words, I accepted his proposal. At that time, I had no doubts and felt pure joy. However, when I told his parents that we were getting married, their attitude changed dramatically. You're serious about getting married? We were okay building a relationship with you because we thought you'd both eventually break up, she raged. Both Daniel and I were surprised by her sudden change. However, he then said to me, since I am their only son, maybe they are just shocked that I'm finally getting married. A son is a special being to a mother, I often heard. So, we didn't take it seriously. But she was unexpectedly disturbed by our marriage so much that, despite the smooth progress of our marriage preparations, she repeatedly told Daniel, you should avoid young women. She's surely after your money. Women closer to your age or with more experience would be more suitable. Since she said that to Daniel many times, I figured out that she was indeed opposed to the marriage and did not think well of me. However, I didn't know why she disliked me so much, and that fact pained my heart. Daniel always protected and supported me. I tried to improve my relationship with her and to have as many face-to-face opportunities as possible. Then, one day, an unexpected event occurred when we visited his parents' home to decide on the wedding guests. His mother calmly stated, no need for guests. You'll end up getting divorced soon anyway. Daniel stood up and appealed to her, Mom, please stop. You cared about Stacy so much until we decided to get married. Why would you say such a thing? Dad, say something, and sought support from his usually silent father. His father looked at us, cleared his throat, and spoke, with all due respect. I heard that Stacy was living by herself until she met you. We've been kind out of sympathy, but welcoming her into the family is a different matter. Having been living alone means there's no one to vouch for her character. I'm sorry, but love and marriage are different things. When I heard that, I felt as if I had been hit in the head with a blunt object. The sorrow of losing my parents was enough, but I never imagined that it would cause me to be treated this way. Daniel was also visibly devastated by those words and tearfully said, no one to vouch for Stacy's character? I have been by her side all this time. She is truly warm and kind-hearted. You both said so, didn't you? He appealed to his parents and then fell silent. My heart was also full of pain. Unable to endure the situation any longer, I eventually chose to part ways with Daniel. One day, around half a year after our separation, I unexpectedly ran into Daniel's mother at work. Daniel and I had worked at the same company, but we were in different departments, so our paths rarely crossed. Now that our relationship was over, I shouldn't have had any chance of meeting her, yet she came to my department asking, "Is Stacy here?" "Yes, I'm here. It's been a while. We need to talk." She approached me with a social smile, and my face stiffened with tension. "There's a bit of time left until the end of the day. I'll wait for you at the cafe outside." With those words, she left the room. In our department, many people come and go all the time, and no one pays much attention to any visitor. But the conversation she wanted to have might cause some troubles if someone were to overhear it. Unable to treat her rudely, I nodded in agreement. After finishing my work, I headed to the cafe where she was already drinking coffee alone. "You must be tired," she said with a forced smile as she saw me. "What's happening? Don't be so stiff. My husband and I regret the harsh things we said to you." "Really? If we were the cause for your separation with Daniel, forget about us. You two are free to decide on your marriage and everything else." I could not hide my surprise at her words. I had no idea what made her change her mind, but her intentions didn't matter to me. Since I still had feelings for Daniel, I was happy to hear those words. That night, I received a call from Daniel. It seemed he hadn't forgotten about me either, and after discussing about our future together, we ended up reconciling. The marriage plans that had been extinguished before were now starting anew. This time, however, his parents accepted me quietly. After starting a new life together with Daniel, I felt the warmth of my parents-in-law and was fulfilled. However, sometime after the marriage, I overheard my mother-in-law talking on the phone. Yes, he married that orphan. For now, everything is going smoothly. I stopped in my tracks. She was using the word orphan. It was the same term she used when she drove me out of the house. I felt bitterness in her words as she used it in her phone conversation then. Unaware that I was listening, my mother-in-law continued her conversation. "I thought an older woman would be better, but as you said, a young wife requires less care. An older woman would also increase the risks of miscarriage. So it's also reassuring in that sense. We took her in despite having been living alone, so she must take good care of us." It seemed she was talking to a friend, but it didn't matter who the other party was. I felt a deep betrayal and despair at her words. My mother-in-law had not truly accepted me. It seemed she had deemed me a usable entity based on a friend's suggestion. Even from that short conversation, I could discern the truth and felt unimaginable sadness. But Daniel believed that his parents had repented their previous actions and had accepted me. I wanted to avoid hurting him, so I decided to keep this fact to myself. Since then, I've maintained a reasonable distance with my in-laws. You can rely more on Mom for housework. Dad will help right away even if it's just to change a light bulb, Daniel would say kindly, but I didn't want to be indebted to my in-laws. "Don't worry, I can handle such things myself." I would decline his suggestions politely every time. A year passed, and as we entered our second year of marriage, we were still working together and living with his parents. In the midst of our changing daily life, an incident occurred while Daniel was away on a business trip. For the first time, it was just his parents and I living together, and I had no parental home or place to return to. With no escape, I reluctantly welcomed the night. The dining table, usually surrounded by 4, was now set for 3, and the atmosphere was clearly different from usual. And it was a certain remark from my mother-in-law that accentuated this unease. "Stacy, I find it difficult to ask when Daniel is around, but when are you all going to have children?" "Yes, about that. It's a blessing we haven't been able to receive yet." I had anticipated that question someday, but still, I was taken aback by such a direct inquiry. "You contribute nothing to the household finances, and you don't have any children. I can't see the point of having welcomed you into this house." Seeing my timid demeanor, my mother-in-law expressed her anger. I couldn't say a word back to her. In the past, childless women were called useless and could be driven out of the house. My father-in-law, despite his gentle tone, showered me with harsh words. I just kept silent and continued my meal. However, Perhaps my lack of apology or rebuttal displeased her. In her anger, she stood up and threw the apron I had worn out of the window. I was just dumbfounded by her sudden action. But her bizarre behavior did not stop there. She went around the house, grabbing my belongings at random, and threw them out of the window right before my eyes. Why do you buy such expensive aprons and kitchenware when your cooking skills are mediocre at best? Really? What do you think of Daniel's earnings? Her action of throwing out my belongings was clearly irrational. Yet, she seemed completely unaware of her abnormal behavior. After discarding everything, she said with satisfaction, "We really should have never welcomed an orphan like you into our home. Your silence means your parents must have left this world without giving you proper upbringing." I had remained silent for a long time, but I could not endure those words and expressed my anger. I slammed my fork down on the table and glared sharply at her. Seeing her flinch for a moment, my father-in-law then scolded me loudly as if to back her up. "What are you doing, Stacy? Your attitude is unacceptable. Be grateful you have food to eat. That's only possible because Daniel is here." He continued, "That's right. How long will you depend on your husband's income? If you have something to say to us, become independent without relying on Daniel first, and then we'll talk. It's unbelievable that you live without paying rent. You're such a waste." In response to my defiance, both of them began to shout in anger. I could no longer bear it. I would rather live a lonely life than stay in that house. I would never try to make these uncomprehending people understand me. I quietly stood up. Then I said to them, "I'm leaving." That night, I started preparing to move out. I went out to the garden, picked up my belongings one by one, dusted off the mud on their surface, and packed them in my bag. My in-laws just watched me pick up my things. Their faces seemed to mock me, but they said nothing. The next day, I left the house with my belongings. "I'm leaving. I don't know where you're going, but until the divorce is official, don't cause any trouble," she said. I don't know if that was an appropriate farewell to a daughter-in-law leaving the house or not. However, instead of responding, I simply stood there silently. "Where are you going? Without a guarantor, you won't be able to find a place to live, won't you?" He spoke with a tone of concern, but I could feel the unpleasant disdain in his words. Regardless, I had no intention of asking them for help. "Don't worry, I'll manage somehow." With those words, I left the house. Then the night came. "Stacy, where are you?" When Daniel returned from his trip, it seemed he was informed by his parents that I had left the house. He contacted me in a hurry. "Why did you leave the house? If you have any problems with me, why don't we talk about it? Let's discuss this properly." "What are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with you. The truth is, I was forced out of the house by your parents." "What?" Daniel was silent after hearing my story, obviously surprised. No doubt, his parents must have told him that I left on my own accord. We decided to meet and talk. Even if I was determined to get a divorce, we should at least discuss it face to face. When we met up at the range place, I opened up to Daniel about the way his parents had been treating me. It must have been hard for him to accept the fact that his seemingly warm parents actually did not accept me at all. Still, he believed me. "I'm sorry I didn't notice the tough time you were going through," he said with tears in his eyes. My heart ached to see him like this. He was a victim too. His happiness was threatened by his own parents. Not wanting to burden Daniel any further, I took out the divorce papers. But upon seeing them, Daniel immediately tore them up. "I'm going to leave that house too. I won't leave you alone." "What?" "From now on, we'll walk our own path, free from my parents. We won't have to be apart anymore." I was moved by Daniel's resolve and could only nod in agreement. Hand in hand, we returned to his parents' house where they had been waiting for us to return. "So, have you already filed for divorce?" My mother-in-law asked Daniel sarcastically upon seeing me. "Did you come back to pick up your stuff? Well, you're still young. You'll find someone else." My father-in-law's words might have been intended as encouragement, but their insensitivity was exasperating. Daniel spoke up boldly. "We're not getting divorced. I'm starting a new life with Stacy. So, we're leaving this place. His parents were shocked and outraged at his declaration. Leave? Why would you leave for someone like her? Mom, how did you even think of driving Stacy out of the house? I can't understand you at all. Upon hearing his retort, she gasped and was at a loss for words. I think it's inhumane to trample on everything Stacy has done for this family. I can't call such people parents. Daniel criticized them with even more vigor. Overwhelmed by his strong tone, my in-laws laughed mockingly as if to tease him upon hearing his words. Ha ha ha. Everything she has done, you say? I have no personal ill will towards Stacy, but to say that she's been supporting us is an exaggeration. Honestly, whether she's here or not makes no difference. That's right. If anything, we've been taking care of her all this time. Indeed, Stacy hasn't been putting her salary into the household, hasn't she? She's just been eating away at your earnings. As they continued to ridicule me, Daniel grew increasingly angry with every word. What are you talking about? Who's been spending Stacy's savings? What? Daniel, I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't be stopped. The living expenses here have all been covered by Stacy. I've been saving my income for the future, to be used when we would need to take care of you both. Stacy said this arrangement would make you both happy. Daniel repeated the words I had said at the beginning of our marriage. She promised to take on all the living expenses, and it's thanks to her that we have what we do now. How can you say such things? He emphasized. At this, my parents-in-law looked at each other. As if she couldn't believe it, his mother retorted, Oh, that can't be true. I heard that Stacy has been saving all her salary. Furthermore, his father said, You're saying we can live on her salary alone? That's ridiculous. You've been poisoned by Stacy's words and become a pathetic son. They were screaming in frustration. I couldn't help but feel angry at those words. What Daniel's saying is true. I kept silent out of consideration for the two of you, but I cannot stand by while he is made out to be the villain. Stacy, the truth is, the living expenses were being managed from my parents' inheritance. My father owned a lot of real estate, so even now, we still have rental income coming in. I've been using those funds for our living expenses. It seemed that my in-laws were at a loss for words at this revelation. Their faces turned pale. Their mouths agape. They seemed to be struggling with how to cover up their own blunder. So that's how it was. We didn't understand anything. My mother-in-law tried to laugh it off with a desperate smile toward me. However, that contrived smile was distasteful to me. I thought her angry expression earlier was better than her hideous smile. However, there will be no need for that from now on. Daniel and I will leave here, so you two should just take care of yourselves. With that, wait a minute. As we tried to leave after saying what we wanted to, my father-in-law dropped to his knees to stop us. However, Daniel coldly rejected his father and said, I had hoped that you both would change. This is truly sad. Afterward, I led Daniel to our home. The house I moved into is also one of the properties I inherited from my father. The luxurious house, worth $3 million, had been rented out to a famous person overseas until recently. The celebrity had just finished her activities in the US and returned home, and the home cleaning was completed, making it ready for us to move in right away. The day I was driven out by my in-laws, I decided to live in this house and obtain the keys from the real estate agent. I had heard about it, but it really is a wonderful house. This was Daniel's first time visiting, and he was very pleased. Then, we started a happy life together. However, my in-laws somehow found our address and one day suddenly visited us together. Stacy, when I got home, there was my mother-in-law calling my name. I recognized her immediately, but I had no time to hide. The bad weather and rain impaired visibility, and although she called my name, it took me a while to locate her. Meanwhile, they hurriedly approached me. Mother, I'm so glad. I was searching around here, thinking it must be near. It seemed they had made it this far relying on the address, but they couldn't find the actual house. But more than their appearance, I was concerned about the luggage they carried. My mother-in-law had a large tote bag, and my father-in-law carried a suitcase. Noticing my gaze fixed on their luggages, my mother-in-law looked down at her tote bag. "Oh, this? Actually, we just got back from a trip and bought some souvenirs." Could that really be the case? As I continued to stare silently at them, both of them started speaking apologetically. "We truly regret our actions. That's why we want to apologize properly again." It's true. My father-in-law also apologized. Whether their attitudes were sincere or not, I couldn't be harsh to people who were apologizing in the rain, carrying heavy luggages. The place had a lot of traffic, and I preferred to talk to them somewhere more private. "Let's talk inside." Reluctantly, I led them into my home. "This is your house. This big house." My mother-in-law was astonished by the size of the house. My father-in-law, too, was looking around with keen eyes. As I prepared coffee and urged them to sit, my mother-in-law, in high spirits, began opening the doors of the rooms one after another, saying, "Wait a minute. What are these rooms? With so many rooms, we could live here too." The modest demeanor they had shown outside had vanished, and there they were, the same presumptuous in-laws as before. I was confused, but then Daniel came home. As soon as he noticed his parents, he raised his voice. "Why are you two here?" and approached them. "Daniel, don't be so angry. We just came to talk. There's nothing to talk about. Please leave." "But you're our son, aren't you? We can live together, can't we?" When my mother-in-law began to say such things, I was disappointed. The apology was nothing but a lie. From the beginning, my in-laws came seeking to live with us. I was deceived by their act and let them into the house too easily. Disappointed in my own carelessness, I looked at Daniel. The three were discussing in the hallway, away from the rooms in the house. Feeling that I was burdening Daniel once again, I suddenly grabbed the large tote bag my mother-in-law brought, slipped through them, headed to the front door, and threw it out into the rain. "What are you doing?" Their argument stopped abruptly at my sudden action. Then, I also threw out the suitcase my father-in-law carried. "How dare you throw out people's luggages?" Unbelievable. My father-in-law's face turned red with anger, and they hurried out into the rain to retrieve their luggage. "I have had my belongings thrown away by you before." My mother-in-law looked surprised at my words, as if remembering her actions. Furthermore, despite being Daniel's wife, I was also driven out of the house. "I would like to ask what kind of nerve you have to want to live with us." "That's why. We came to apologize for that." "No need for apologies. I can no longer think of you two as family. Please do not interfere with us from now on." She then responded angrily. "Daniel is my son. I won't let someone like you take him away." Her insistence was strong, but such a claim would not reach Daniel. "Well, that's that then." Daniel said that with a smile and then closed and locked the front door. His parents, wet under the rain, seemed to have no choice but to return to their own house that day. However, they did not give up and visited us every day. Since Daniel and I were at work during the day, they used this to their advantage and checked around the house for any open windows. I knew this because they had entered through a bathroom window that I had forgotten to close. A passerby had seen them and thankfully called the police. We also had a contract with a security company, so Daniel was immediately notified as the contract holder. The security company contacted me. "It seems there's an intruder at home." Daniel immediately informed me, and we both rushed home. When we arrived, there were already police cars and security company vehicles parked, and many onlookers. We are not thieves. In the midst of it all, there was my mother-in-law being let out by the police. Daniel and I were just dismayed at the sight of her resisting and raising her voice. Daniel, tell the police we are not suspicious people." My mother-in-law called out to Daniel upon seeing us. The police approached us and asked, "Are you the owners of the house? Do you know this person?" Daniel then deliberately answered in a loud voice, "Yes, I am the owner of the house. I would like you to thoroughly investigate what intentions this person had for entering." After he replied calmly, my mother-in-law showed a look of despair. Daniel didn't confirm whether he knew her or not to the police officer. Following his response, the police officer led my mother-in-law toward the patrol car. My father-in-law followed. He avoided eye contact with us, and Daniel didn't try to look at him either. Eventually, both of them were put into separate patrol cars and were taken away by the police. They claimed they didn't steal anything and just wanted to rest in the house. Daniel was shaking with anger, but I decided to use this opportunity to ensure that we would never be involved with them again, and agreed to withdraw the complaint. Since then, my in-laws have kept their promise and haven't come to our house. One peaceful day, sometime after we could live peacefully, I saw my father-in-law being scolded by an older lady while working part-time at the supermarket. It seems they couldn't make ends meet without working. I smiled faintly and discreetly left the scene. When I got home and told Daniel about it, he burst into laughter. If Dad hadn't always listened to Mom, he might have had a better life. It's sad to see he continues to sacrifice himself for her. Indeed, there is some truth to Daniel's words. My father-in-law has never been a man of strong will and always did whatever my mother-in-law asked. This likely led to the current problem. Also, the break-in has become neighborhood gossip, and they're both being shunned now. Mom's pleasant facade was her only asset, and now even that's gone, I do feel a bit sorry for her. Daniel informed me of her current situation, apparently having learned it through a friend. He also told that friend about all the things my in-laws had done to me. The rumors about the mistreatments you received will probably spread fast. It's the end for those two. But they are your family. Are you really okay with this? I asked Daniel, feeling a bit concerned. Then, with a surprised look turning into a gentle smile, Daniel said, "You are my only family, Stacy." At those words, tears welled up in my eyes. But Daniel's family isn't just me. I placed my hand on my stomach and told him, "It's not just me. There's another one." "What?" "I went to the hospital today, and I found out I'm 3 months pregnant." At that, Daniel's eyes widened, and he smiled a blissful smile I had never seen before. Once an orphan, I now have the most precious family of my own. I am determined to cherish this miracle and create a happy family life, so my parents in heaven can be at peace forever.